What's up, everybody? It's Trey Smith with College Game Time, back with another College Game Time YouTube video. Today, I'm breaking down day 2 of Big 12 Media Days that just wrapped up here in the last hour. In fact, I think they're wrapping up right now with some of the final player interviews from OU. But today had Kansas State, UCF, Texas Tech, Cincy, West Virginia, Iowa State, and OU. Just going to kind of do a similar breakdown like I did yesterday, just run through each of those different coach interviews. What was the thing that stuck out the most to me? And then I'd love to hear your perspective and your feedback on it. We had some good discussion going on over on that Yormark reaction video I did yesterday. More news has come out. A report actually came out this morning. Jim Williams tweeted that big-time booster with UConn. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to missay it, but essentially it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when as it pertains to UConn joining the Big 12. I get it. There's total different perspectives on that. Some of you that are on the Big 12 side love the idea. Some of you on the Big 12 side hate the idea. Some of you on the UConn side love the idea, and on the UConn side hate the idea. I personally think it would be a great move for both the Big 12 and UConn. That's my opinion. I've got a couple of videos out already expressing why I feel that way, so I'm not going to rehash all that right now. But let's get to day 2, starting with Kansas State and Chris Klieman, head coach of the Wildcat football team, coming off a season where they won the Big 12 championship, and being back in the arena, being back at the stadium where they won that championship game back in December of 2022. And he did talk about, got a lot of his guys returning, and the expectations are high, and they're focused on getting back there. In fact, some of his players echoed that as well. They feel like they have the ingredients to do it all over again. He talked about Will Howard. Coach Klieman said that this will be, his exact words were, it's going to be a huge year for Will. And just picking up where he left off in Big 12 play, I've talked a couple times about how I feel about Will Howard and the season I think he's going to have, which, man, watch out Big 12. But then Coach was asked about the loss of Deuce Vaughn and how are we going to replace that? Because that's kind of been my question mark is, okay, I know they got the kid from Florida State, Trayshawn Ward, coming in, but I mean, this is Deuce Vaughn we're talking about. I mean, he carried a huge load in the running game, in the passing game, in the offense altogether last year for Kansas State. And they asked Coach, how are you going to replace this? And he said, first off, you don't replace Deuce Vaughn. We're not looking to replace him. What he did was indispensable. But he did say he sees the running back room and the running game being held by committee next year, or this upcoming season, I should say, not next year. Ooh. But between Trayshawn Ward, the transfer from Florida State, and DJ Giddens, who got some run last year as a part of the Kansas State backfield. And, man, he thinks it'll be running back by committee. He's not worried about it. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the country, probably the best offensive line in the conference, arguably. And I don't know. I think the stars are aligning for a potential Kansas State repeat. Then moving on, we had Gus Malzahn, UCF. Obviously, the Golden Knights are entering their first year in the Big 12. Gus Malzahn, who has a very decorated career as a head coach, coached in a BCS national championship game, was at Auburn for almost a decade, won a national championship as the offensive coordinator at Auburn, took Arkansas to their last SEC championship appearance as the offensive coordinator at Arkansas back in 2006. I shouldn't say he took them, but he was instrumental in that offense, that wild hog, wildcat offense back when Houston Nutt was the head coach. So since he's been in the games, had record-setting years as the OC at Tulsa. I mean, it's like a match made in heaven for UCF, having him come in and being the guy that's sort of ushering their program into the Big 12. And, you know, he talked about how much the Big 12 move is changing the landscape and recruiting for them and helping them significantly. Talked about his new OC, Darren Henshaw, how they want to push the ball downfield more this year. One of the things that he said that stuck out to me was that they ran John Rice Plumlee too much a season ago. And then he ended up getting hurt. And that's what really kind of, I don't want to say derailed their season, because their season wasn't like this. It wasn't a bad season. but they weren't able to reach the heights they probably were expecting to reach had they had a healthy John Rice Plumlee all year. But he just talked about, we're not going to run him as much. We don't want him being our leading rusher, and Henshaw's really working. Henshaw, the former UCF quarterback himself, let's push the ball downfield. Let's take some more shots. Let's keep our quarterback healthy. And, if you look at Gus's tenure as a coach, the deep shot has always been a part of his arsenal. And he did also say, he is not calling the plays. He's not doing that. And he said this is one of the first times where it's his 100% decision instead of being encouraged by others to give up that duty. But kind of echoing what Mike Gundy said yesterday, just with the way the college football landscape is changing, calling the plays and being the head coach is almost just too much, even though there are some guys that do it and do it well. Next, there was Coach Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, man. I love Coach McGuire, former Texas high school football coach, former assistant at Baylor, and the guy is just, he's bleeding red and black. The first thing he did I thought was so cool was he gave what he said, his words, a tip of the cap to Mike Leach, and he had some sort of pirate-type print inside of his jacket, and he talked about Coach Leach. Obviously, Leach was instrumental in turning Texas Tech into at one point, a national brand. And obviously there was a falling out there. They didn't talk about all that. But what I thought was so cool that Coach McGuire acknowledged about Mike Leach's influence was how much his philosophy has taken over high school football in the state of Texas. And he said that. He's like, you can't go to a game on Friday nights in Texas and not see some of Coach Leach's air raid philosophy happening on the field at any game, anywhere in the state. But he talked about the upcoming season and how last year, he's not satisfied with 8 wins. They went 8-5 in his first year, which that's something to be proud about. And he could easily think, win 8 or 9 games every year in Lubbock and they'll make you mayor. And he said, no, I sat down with the coaches. I said, great job, but we didn't win the Big 12. So we still have a lot of work to do. And year 2, he said they want to continue growing as an analytics team. He spoke to that. They are an analytics team and they want to continue improving situational football. And that's what it sounds like they have a third party that comes in once a week and discusses analytics, if I understood what he was saying correctly. But I thought that was pretty cool. And then he echoed something that I said weeks ago when I did my Big 12 quarterback sort of breakdown rankings. I talked about Tyler Shuck. Now, McGuire said it. He said, if we can keep him healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And he's a quarterback that's won Big 12 games. And I said that on a video. I said my biggest question mark coming into this season is Tyler Shuck. Because if he can stay healthy and consistent, Texas Tech can win the Big 12. So I thought it was neat hearing Coach McGuire, not saying that per se, but just talking about how much a healthy Tyler Shuck could really, impact the season results for the Red Raiders. Moving on, we had Scott Satterfield from Cincinnati. He talked about the excitement playing in the Big 12 and how much the players have had a great attitude. He spent a good portion talking about his quarterback, Emory Jones. Emory Jones is the transfer from Arizona State by way of Florida. Emory Jones was a very decorated recruit coming out, and it's just every stop, right? He's at Florida. He waits for his time to shine. Dan Mullen leaves. Napier comes in. Then he gets beat out by Anthony Richardson, who initially I don't think no one realized was going to be a top 5 pick. And then he transfers to Arizona State. Arizona State kind of puts him in more of a like drop back passing type scheme. Wasn't really tailoring to what he does well. But then they have a coaching change. So now he's at Cincinnati. And I actually think, and I've said this before as well, I think that's like a perfect pair. If you look at how Satterfield likes to use the quarterback and you look at what Emory Jones does well, look at Malik Cunningham in those years with Satterfield at Louisville, and you can kind of get a possible glimpse into the Cincinnati offense for 2023. I'll say this, though, about Satterfield. And y'all go back and watch his interview with the panel and let me know your thoughts, those of you that care, or if you're a Cincy fan. He does sound kind of like a guy to me who knows he has his work cut out for him, at least this season. Happy to be at Cincy, sees just nothing but potential being there, especially with Cincy being in the Big 12. But I just got this vibe from him that, like, he knows this upcoming season. I mean, they've had, I think, 20 guys come in, 21 new players come in from the portal. Sounded like a guy that knows he's got his work cut out for him in 2023. Then Neil Brown, West Virginia, trying to have a bounce back year. They had a very down season last year, and they asked him, he had so many struggles on the defensive side of the ball. What has he done to address those in the offseason? And he made it simple. He said, we simplified things. We want to be in the right places. We want to be aligned correctly, and we want to be able to play fast and furious. And in order to do that, we had to simplify some things, and he said that's what they did. They've been emphasizing fundamentals, tackling, being in the right position. And on the other side of the ball, he said he's got a lot of faith in his O-line. They have 132 collective starts amongst their offensive line. And he said they're going to be more athletic at the QB position, and he's got a 240-pound running back coming in who started the season off well last year. I think he had some injuries, so curious to see what that offense looks like. Might have some flashes of the old 2000s West Virginia teams running the spread option where it's more ground and pound, but they definitely don't have a Pat White, but this 240-pound running back, he could show flashes of some old school Steve Slayton, but don't really know what to expect of West Virginia. Their schedule does not help them out. They're at Penn State to start the season. Of course, they're playing Pitt again in the backyard brawl. So those are non-conference games. Then they got to get into the Big 12. And like we've been saying, man, there's just no week off in the Big 12. There's so much parity every week. Any team could win. And I don't know. We'll have to see how things play out for the old Mountaineers. Then Iowa State's Matt Campbell came up. One thing I've always appreciated about Matt Campbell was he's somewhat of a wordsmith in how he communicates. I remember several years ago when they beat OU, I think at OU, and it was kind of that program-changing win, so to speak. It may have been in his second year, maybe his third. I think it was the second year coming off 3-9, and he told his team, when you fall in love with the process, eventually the process loves you back. He really has the makeup of that type of coach that is a program builder and a groundbreaker. And they had a down year last year. They had their first losing season since his first year. And the thing that he said was that he's been emphasizing that at Iowa State, what makes them successful is that they are worthy to suffer. He said being worthy to suffer is what makes Iowa State special. And just talking about having this ability to learn through struggle. And so if you look at how his program bounced back from the last time they had a losing season, they go 3-9, and they followed up with 5 consecutive years of winning seasons, 3 of those 5 being 8+ wins, and 1 of those winning a New Year's Six Bowl. And had that not been a COVID-stricken season, they probably win 10 games that year. So they went, 4-8 last year? Could be set up for another 5-year run in Ames. And that's just the thing about Iowa State. Nobody wants to go play in Ames. Nobody does. So they always have that. Whether they're having a good year or a bad year, like nobody wants to play in Ames. And then finally, to wrap up, day 2 of media days was Brent Venables for OU. I'm not sure what to make of it. He was emphasizing efficiency in everything. That's been their point of emphasis this offseason, is being efficient. They asked him what did he learn in year 1 that he's going to carry over into year 2 to be a better coach. He said to listen to his players, listen to his coaches. Ultimately, he has to make those tough decisions, but he's more open to hearing the voices that are around them and trusting them. And that makes sense. I think any first-year head coach wants to be in control of everything because it's like everything is on you. And then I see how, Urban Meyer used to talk about that, where when he first became a head coach, he was like in every position room, every position meeting. And it wasn't until he got more experienced as a head coach that he began to release those reins. But by releasing those reins, it made him more effective in his role. And so I don't know if that's kind of a shift we're going to see with Brent Venables this season where he's able to release some of those things that he held on tightly to last year as it pertains to just day-to-day stuff that's going to free him up to be a better head coach. He did say that one thing he feels much better about this season than last season is the competitive depth that OU has now compared to last year. And they did. OU lost, those games down the stretch where he was talking about we were gassed and tired, and we just didn't have the competitive depth necessary to overcome that fatigue. And he feels like they do now. So we'll see. I don't know. OU's kind of a question mark for me coming into the season. And I think to be more specific there, it's like, what is their identity now? When they had Lincoln Riley, it's like you knew what you were getting. You knew you were getting this high-powered offense. You knew you were going to have great quarterback play, possibly a Heisman winner at that position. You knew their defense was going to be just good enough to win the games they needed to win, or win the Big 12 at least, I should say. Wasn't good enough once they got into the playoff, the years that they made it to the playoff. But you knew what you were getting. Like, you knew what their identity was. And I don't know if that's as clear to me with OU right now. I think I know what he's wanting it to be, but the question is, are they that? I think he wants to be similar to what Clemson was during that 3-4 year window when they were running college football with those just incredible front seven defenses and just some of the best athletes in the country on the back end, and those defenses would just smother you and suffocate you. And then they had a high-powered offense that was either being triggered by Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence, and I just don't know if they're there yet, but we'll see. We'll see. He feels like the depth is there, but time will tell. And thankfully for us as college football fans, the time is not that long. That's it for me. Wrapping up day 2 of Big 12 Media Day. Thank you for those who have been watching. I'd love for you to share down in the comments what your thoughts are heading into the upcoming season. And until next time, Trey Smith, College Game Time.